Hey, my name is TJ. I'm here today hosting the Recovery Matters podcast. I am in recovery. For me, that means I haven't had a drink or a drug since August 9th, 2016. I'm here today with
Michael Brunk. I am a recovery ally, and God bless. Thank you for all you do, TJ.
Thank you, and thank you very much for coming on today. We've known each other for a while, and you've kind of filled me in on some of your direct family experience, right? And I think one of the most overlooked pieces of the recovery community is the family community, right? It's a pocket within the recovery community because who the hell is supporting all of us, right? So there's a lot of sober people out there, a lot of people in recovery, a lot of people who are clean and sober, like however they identify in recovery, right? But there is a community of people behind them who support them and love them. And thank you for being one of those people.
No, I appreciate it. It's it's a blessing. Yeah, I mean the disease of addiction, it doesn't know any boundaries, right? So it's I come from a family that growing up, I didn't know anything about this even being a disease. It was just normal behavior. We alcohol and drugs and partying was just something that we did, and it was accepted. And by the grace of God, I just some people wired certain ways. I was fortunate enough, I guess, that I was able to put it down when I was ready to make that decision, and it certainly wasn't from pushing the envelope or I did that plenty. And then I also I had a healthy fear of what it looks like, of what the disease looks like, just from growing up around it. And I've been blessed to have 4 beautiful kids. So
That's awesome.
When I had my first, that was also a pretty big pivotal moment for me. But I lost my brother to the disease, ultimately a year ago, May. He lost his struggle. He wasn't so fortunate. He struggled his entire adult life. In and out of facilities, and I don't know. I think it was later found. He was 45, I believe, when he passed. It's kind of a sad scenario. Left 3 kids behind, and he's. I think he definitely had some struggles that were pretty apparent on the outside. People around him, but I mean, he worked for the post office, and it wasn't like he didn't have access. He had access to help and treatment, but he just couldn't find his way through that darkness.
When did you notice that it was a problem in his life?
Well, again, I guess I would say it was probably in his late 20s, early 30s, and it was really, I don't even know that I thought of it as a problem, as I noticed, like, there was a point in my life when I am 10 years older than him. I noticed in my own life where I needed to make decisions, kind of like I had my son.
Yes.
And when I had my son, I was in my 30s. Left Manhattan, lived in Manhattan in my 20s, and partied like a rock star. Worked in the nightclubs and all that good stuff. And I realized that I needed to make some personal changes, and I needed to grow up. Start taking some accountability. And then I recognized with him, it wasn't so much that I thought necessarily that he had a substance use issue, but that he didn't want to do that growing up. And, he wanted to keep the party going. And I remember going home in when I was in my 30s and I had my son, and we were, bringing him back to visit the family. And I remember there were a few times he wanted to go out. Like we'd go out to the bar and have some drinks, and he wanted to keep that party going, though. And I think that's kind of when I realized, and even then, I don't know that I did the right thing. I didn't know what to do. I just kind of distanced myself, right? Like, from the phone calls, from the behavior, because I felt like that's what I needed to do to sort of protect myself. But that was really my first kind of, I guess, when I think back, like, when did I look at it and say, there's something wrong here? When I really, after coming into this space and having worked in the recovery field as a treatment advocate, that's what I do now.
Yep.
I learned a lot about the disease of addiction and substance use. Just kind of educating myself, finding my voice in this space. Obviously sharing my experiences. Then I started to understand starting to understand a little more what was going on, with my brother, and tried to provide some support. But I don't know. It's a wild thing, watching. I know you've seen it. We've all seen
Oh
it
yeah.
in this space where, you have every reason to live.
Hmm.
You got everything to live for.
Yep. I think that's like really what separates like the true problem drinker from the alcoholic, right? And like
Mm.
that's some old school AA stuff.
Yeah.
Like right out of the big book, right? And like that's one of the first things that they give you in treatment is like get you into some like type of recovery literature, at least old school treatment.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot different nowadays. I mean, I haven't been to treatment in 12 years. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But like that was one of the first things, right? And it's like that's kind of like what helps us differentiate that, and you talked about your experience. It's like for me, like there like I thought that my problem was X or Y or Z. It was never the substance, right? It
Mm.
was like this is my issue, and then like my solution is the substance, right?
Mm.
And then like that problem would get better,
Yeah.
and I'd still be using the substance, right? And like at a certain point, like the substance became so much far more important than anything else.
Mm.
And that's what separates me is that like I truly couldn't stop until I was actually stopped, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that there's instances where I was definitely pushing the envelope,
Mhm.
and had that had gone the wrong direction, and maybe I ended up in handcuffs, or something, or
Mhm.
worse, maybe I because I definitely, you don't make good decisions. I made plenty of bad decisions, and any one of those could have led me
Mhm.
to a facility, and making a conscious decision at that moment because things were just kind of wild. But by the grace of God, that didn't happen.
Yep.
I was able to sort of get to a place where I was able to see how the lifestyle that I was living, and it just wasn't something that I could sustain.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned we grew up in an environment that was pretty chaotic.
Oh yeah.
So my mom had me real young, 18,
Okay.
single mom. And then she had my two brothers, also pretty young. So my youngest, Nicholas, he's the one that passed. I think she had us all by the time she was 24, 25, something
Wow.
like that. So she was pretty young by the time she had us all. Um, and so she was pretty wild, man. This was in the 70s too, and you know, yeah, man. There's like pictures, and I remember growing up. Like when I think about, we have childhood stuff, right? And I
Yep.
remember growing up, and I remember a few things. Like I remember liking the smell of my mom's funny smelling cigarettes.
Yep.
That was that was a favorite. And it was we would go to concerts. There was pictures of me, like, so it was, again, that environment was just normalized. It was, but it was chaotic at the same time.
Yep.
And I saw a lot of darkness too.
Yep.
In that, I saw a lot of it in my mom, and she passed a lot of that on to us. And I used that, though. I used a lot of that darkness to kind of fuel myself to make some different decisions,
Hmm.
for myself. And then when, one thing led to another, I had the opportunity to just make some choices and changes in my life. And I did that. And I got into health and wellness. And that's, I
That's
kind of
really cool.
devoted my life, and, starting in my 30s to, working with folks one-on-one. And I started as a personal trainer, and I got certified, worked for a great company in New York, and ended up running their clubs, a couple of their clubs, as a general manager,
Nice.
and kind of took off with that and turned it into a career, and did that for 15 years. But all along, I worked a lot with folks, and and again, I still really, even during that time, I had never made really a connection to recovery, the recovery community. I didn't even know this community existed,
Yep.
honestly, and but now kind of looking back on it, and I look at how the wellness industry in a lot of ways saved me, because it gave me the opportunity to think about something bigger than myself,
Yep.
beyond myself. Living 20s and partying like a rock star. I didn't care
Yeah.
about anybody or anything. It was just all about me and what I wanted, and satisfying my desires. And
Hmm.
when I left that sort of selfish mindset, and I put myself in an environment where now it became about helping somebody else. And then you start to listen, and you start to hear, and people share, right? So
Yep.
it's interesting. So I told you I was a bartender for a number of years. Personal trainer is not so much different than bartending, man, and in the sense that you're like you become their like private therapist, right? So
Yep.
they just dump everything on you during your hour session. But it gave me a lot of perspective and a lot of insight into just, we're human, right? And
Yes.
what what that even means, like to we're we're all fragile, right? And you know, in our psyche and in our emotions and our desire to be accepted and fit in and all that. And then, you know, you see these, I mean, I've worked with thousands of people in that space, and a lot of them, outwardly speaking, super successful.
Yes.
But then, you know, when you peel that back a little bit and you see, well, there's just as much dysfunction. And addiction doesn't always look like just substance use either.
Yep.
You know, in that space, it's food, it's a lot of things, right?
Absolutely.
And it's stress, it's, you know, and it's negative energy, man. And you bring that energy in to your body and you store it in, you know, in negative ways. You know, it builds up. And literally, I got to a place like, well, you know, down at a point when, after doing it for a long time, I could almost read what was going on in somebody's life just by the things that were going on in their body.
Yes.
Because you carry the tension up in your neck, or, you know, I've got shoulder pain, and, you know, it gets, you know, you just see how you just kind of store, you know, but then you can also see on the flip side of that, the beauty is when you start to love yourself. And that's, I guess that's the message, right? So that's probably what I learned after doing it for 15 years and tried to carry it into this is, it's all about love, man.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, it really is. You got to love yourself, and you got to love people, and you got to love God, and you got to find a place for it all, you know. And it's hard to do that when you're, you know, when you're deep in addiction, though, when you're deep in that darkness, because you just can't see it. It's just hard to see past it. So,
and it's the same thing. You were kind of talking about, alluding to it a little bit before, about education.
Yeah.
Around like substance use and stuff like that. And I was thinking about a experience that I had that actually just came up. So I was like 18 or 19. I'd gotten out of treatment for the first time. And like, you know, you do a lot of education and treatment. Oh, it's a family disease and blah, 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 blah. And I remember like being in the car with my dad and like I'm not really staying sober. And like, you know, this whole thing. And I'm like talking to him and I say something about like, yeah, and like, I'm just like the only one in the family, or like, I feel like I'm the only one in the family that's got this thing. And he's like, looks at me, he literally lists all these people with the family. And it's like, I felt like it was like this hidden thing for so long. That like, you know, because, you know, a lot of people, it's just a part of family life.
Yeah.
Right. And like what, you know, like the whole closed doors kind of thing. And like, and I don't know, so you work with families as well in your role, right? You get the call and you support somebody and you help them navigate, you know, where they need to go, right?
I do. Yeah. I love it. I mean, there's a lot that I love about doing this, especially like, you know, a lot of what I do, and a lot of where you and I have even worked in the past is really kind of meeting people, you know, in that moment of crisis, except, you know, in that moment where, you know, they're sick and tired of being sick and tired and they're ready to make a change, and, you know, and then trying to help them to navigate that, and then hopefully get into a, you know, a detox, you know, followed by continued treatment, and, you know, whatever that looks like for them. You know, I love it. I love having the interaction with the person. A lot of times, though, in that particular moment, the individual that's seeking treatment, they're not necessarily completely there. You know, they're coming off of whatever they're coming off of, and, you know, feeling sick, or, you know, they've just been burning the candle at both ends for a long period of time. So you end up engaging a lot with the family and the support system. It's fascinating, you know. It's fascinating what that looks like. You know, and it's heartbreaking at times. And you want, you know, because I think there is this desire, especially in the education like we're talking about. It's like you don't know until you don't know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it. And I don't think a lot of people, maybe not as much now. I think people are getting a little more savvy to this, but they don't realize there's not a cure. And I think a lot of times within the family's mind, it's like, we're going to send, you know, our loved one to treatment. And there's going to be some kind of a cure in there for them. And, you know, and then, so there is that education piece that this isn't something that's going to go away. You know,
I can't sell you a promise here.
Right.
You know, and like, I'm not going to pretend to, right?
Correct.
And it's like, hey, listen, you know, for me, the way I look at it too is like, we got to jumpstart this car, right? Like, treatment is the jumper cables. But if we're going to get this battery going and running.
Yeah.
But this battery needs work.
It needs some work, man. Not only does the battery need work, we need a new windshield. We got to get some new tires on this thing. You know, there's all kinds of work we got to do. Yeah. No, God bless, man. That's exactly right. And sometimes it's hard. It's a little heartbreaking too, because you see sometimes the families, you know, parents in particular, a lot of times they're fueling the dysfunction.
Oh yeah.
They're enabling. They have problems of their own, addiction issues, and they don't want to see their issues because maybe they've been able to manage theirs in a less destructive way.
Yep.
So they don't need the treatment, but so it's hard, right? So it's not it's understanding again when you leave, at some point that your loved one's going to come home, and you have, if you want to give them the best chances for success, you do need to educate yourself. But it's compassion. It is a wild space. I think that you've seen it. I think we all see it. Because there's so, it's kind of I don't know. It's just not. It's not openly discussed, right? So
Yes.
there's still a lot of stigma.
Yep.
So when your family member finds himself in that spot, they don't really know where to go or who to turn to. So probably like most people, first thing they do is they go on their phone or go on their computer and they do a Google search, detox. And if you don't understand the way that works, you don't know what you're going to get, right? So families that are seeking that help, seeking that support can a lot of times fall to some predatory behavior.
Yes.
And so that's a real part of this. So there's a lot, teaching that, what's good treatment, what's, I guess, any treatment that helps your loved one get well is good treatment.
Yep.
But it's not like there's a roadmap for it. But I love it. And
Well, there's also, you got me thinking about the part of that in education and stuff, as well as like marketing,
yeah,
right? Remember Passages Malibu back in the day?
yeah,
I used to be an addict. Now I'm not.
yeah,
Right? That was literally marketed
right.
to people, and seeing the commercial, and like, how does that work?
Yeah, they got the silver bullet over there. Yeah,
Like that kind of thing. And the same thing too, like a lot of education of families was very, so it used to be very like, I want to say like there was very few types of like supports out there, right? Like you'd find your Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, that type of thing. And then like sometimes like, in that there can be a very one-sided approach, right?
yeah.
Right, because I heard, my dad used to go to Al-Anon all the time, and like, it's like kick him out or like do like this, and it's like that's great in theory,
Right, yeah,
but like, how many people does that actually work? I think it's more about like, boundary navigation, right, and like setting up boundaries so that like things don't, and there's a lot of that, right, and it's the same thing too. It's like I think about it now as a father, right, and it's like, what if I like.
Yeah, there's nothing I'm not doing for my kid.
Seriously. And like, I don't know.
Right, and we'd been in, and we know, but I think about it as a parent. There's nothing I wouldn't do for my kids.
Anything. Literally anything.
I have that. So this is something that, definitely I think of a lot of instances that I've had this conversation, and, and the parent or the loved one, the spouse will ask, like, what's, what tough love, or, what do you recommend in this scenario? Should I just cut them off? And, and I'm pretty honest, I think it looks different for everyone. What your tolerance to what's going on may look very different than what my tolerance would be, or, again, it's your child, and it's you have a lot invested in this individual. You may not realistically be able to just shut them off, so, but what does that healthy boundary look like? Ultimately you have to make that decision. I know, going back to my brother, and I, again, my mom had a long history with substance use and mental health. It went into treatment when we were young, and she's familiar. She did a lot of work in the community where I'm from, which is Kansas.
Okay.
She's worked within, the recovery community, helped AA meetings, helped folks, get to detox so she's familiar with it. And, my brother spent his last, couple of months living in her dining room. And this was after numerous times of going into treatment and self-harm and just all kinds of stuff, right? But in her mind, and she still has this sort of, this question, and it's going to shouldn't take it to her grave, but she, did she do the wrong thing, right? By letting, but in her mind, she's like, she knew, I think when you're a parent, that there's my child's in real danger here. So in her mind, she was just like, if once when it got to that place, he was ultimately ruled a suicide,
Okay.
just because of the amount of prescription medication he had taken on top of the amount of alcohol. They ruled it as a suicide. I think she knew it was coming.
Yep.
So she, in her mind, she would rather it have happened in her home where she, at least she knew he was warm and,
Safe.
safe. It's that's something really weird, that's a hard thing. I think
I
that's a hard
bet.
thing for somebody that doesn't understand it to like,
Hmm.
wrap their head around. Like, why,
Yeah. I've had a lot of like instances, right, where like I've been so close to like just in many like various roles, right, especially at work. Like for me, like I love people, right? Like
Mm,
that's why we do what we do,
yep.
right? Like I've worked with somebody in the hospital, and it's like, hey, listen, come check this out, come and do this. You're texting them, and then like all of a sudden, like there's no text back, and mom calls you and thanks you for everything you did, and you're like
Mm,
you were like close,
mm,
and then you like feel that it's like, well, what more could I have done? So like there's a lot of like those types of aspects around dealing with it, and it's like, and that, like that's like a real situation. I have a guy too that I was working with, bringing him all around, doing all kinds of stuff with CCAR. Blew me off a couple of times. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna, just step back a little bit, let him, like, I'm not gonna beg somebody, and like, it's not right at a certain point. It's not right to beg somebody, and then like, boom, all of a sudden, like, he's gone.
yeah.
And it's like, we were really
Mm,
close. Like, we were really close to some type of, like, I want to say functionable recovery here, right? Like
yeah.
the connection to the support, right? Like, and the thing too is like, once you've been to treatment one or two times, like you're educated,
Yeah. Mm,
right? And the same
oh
thing
yeah.
with family, right? Like once you've been to a couple of these things, or you hear a little bit of this or hear,
Mm,
and like you start to develop and like look at it and be like, you
yeah.
know,
So I heard a statistic. You're right. Like it's first of all, I hope it's changing. I think it is changing. I think it's going to continue to get better over as we bring more attention, and it's also getting some really great attention at a from higher level, from people that have influence, that have whether they're a politician or whether they're a celebrity or just that have had their own personal struggles with addiction or mental health, and now they're sharing it.
yep,
So I think that's going to open up the gates for more people to feel comfortable and say, hey, I need help
yes,
too. I can't do this on my own. But all that said, I think statistics right now are like 1 in 10, right? So 1 in 10 people that are struggling from this disease actually seek help. Actually, will like take like that sort of necessary step, go to detox, do residential, and then whatever that looks like, right? And then, but within that 1%, something like I don't want to butcher it, but it's a high percentage of total people that are actually going into treatment are recycled from that 1%. So something like it's a high percentage within that 1% are actually the people that are making up. So it's the alumni, it's it's the relapse rates. So there's still, it's not like, so we're kind of cycling through the same individuals like you were saying. So you go to treatment, that's making that connection that like, you go to treatment once or twice. Yeah, and then you understand trauma-informed, treatment and substance use and triggers, and there may be. I mean, there's a lot of clinical stuff, obviously, that we don't have the letters behind our name to do,
yeah,
but you get it, and you sit in a couple groups, you get the gist, and then it really boils down to what kind of work are you willing to put into it,
yep,
and then that's different for everyone.
yep,
It's some will get it, after, I mean, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen one time, one and done.
yep,
Most, and I say this to families too, like I'm really honest, like, so what I found was this, like, and it gets back to sort of that predatory comment that I made. It makes sense if you're good at talking and, and you have some empathy and some compassion. That mom, that dad, that wife, that husband, that wife on the other line, the moment that you show them that you care, even whether you do or not, genuinely or not, they think you care. I mean, they're willing to do whatever. Just like finally somebody picked up the phone. Finally somebody understands me. Finally somebody understands what I'm going through, because we can relate. And then before they know it, they got their kid on a flight flying to Arizona or California or someplace like that,
yep,
right? So
Florida,
or Florida, right, or some market like that, without really being educated, so it's,
it is definitely tough. So I've never had like the lecture experience. I'm like a state aid kind of guy.
yeah,
Like either like Department of Corrections dumped me off somewhere after the sentence and I did a couple of months there, or like my friends and family dumped me off and it's like, we're leaving without you today, so you can stay or walk home.
yeah. Do you think that helped? So I wonder that sometimes, about my brother. Like I made that suggestion to my mom. Like there were a few times that he skated doing some time.
Yep.
And it was because she was willing to bail him out and pay for the attorney. He didn't have the financial means to do it. She would have just taken a step back, and maybe he needed, so I thought, would it have done him any good, and I don't know if going to jail does anybody any good, but,
Yes.
when you get to that place where, you've been to a treatment facility 3 or 4 times, like we were talking about,
Yes.
The program, you could probably teach it yourself.
Literally teach it yourself.
Yeah.
That's why we all work in recovery.
That's right. You're right. You got a degree in there. You got a master's in life. Would it have helped him to have, gone to jail? I don't know. I mean, it's a hindsight 2020.
That is true. So that is such a good question. And it's like one of the chicken or the egg questions. Like, right? Like, which came first? Well, what does it matter? And it's like, well, it matters in the way of like, this is somebody's life. So here's the way I look at it. My mother and father were tough enough on me that I did something, but not tough enough that I had to sleep in the cold.
Okay. So
if I slept in the cold, that was on me.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Like, they were tough enough that, like, when I went to jail, the bond was too crazy anyway, so nobody was coming. But
right.
But like, they picked up the phone. They sent me money for food.
Yeah.
Right. They visited me every week. Once my father or mother, one would pick during the week and one would pick the weekend.
Yeah.
I got 2 visits a week. They drive Manchester to Cheshire, 50 minutes both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that kind of thing, right? And then the same thing when they dropped me off at treatment. She worked. My mom, he's now my sponsor and stuff like that. Him and a couple other young guys in the program dropped me off at treatment, and then I weaseled my way out of inpatient. Right.
I'm good.
Yep. Listen, I did it so many times.
Yeah.
And then like the counselor was cool. She was like old school recovery. She's like, call him up. Let's just tell him because she's basically let him know like here's the deal like, and then like everybody on the other end of the phone is like, if you say you're gonna do it, you better actually do it. So I'm like, all right. So I put that effort into it, and like the thing is like looking back, I think I could have. Like when I came back to my parents' house, my mom would get me up every day, 6:30, get up or get out. I'd have to go to the 7 a.m. meeting down at Pathfinders. I used to do a bunch of stuff. And then I would get home from the meeting. I'd go to IOP like 10 a.m. till 1:30, I think, something like that, 10 a.m. till 2. The thing is like, could I have gotten away with a little bit there probably and not gotten kicked out? I think so. For me, like one of my, like I said, it's my favorite thing to talk about because I was that person that I was sitting in detox and I was saying, I'm going to work this so hard that I sell it to everybody. And then when they take their eyes off me, I'll never do heroin again, but I will drink someday.
Yeah.
And then I worked it so hard that it actually worked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It's a program. I think recovery is a program of action, not intention. I never intended to stay sober for the rest of my life and enjoy recovery. I just did it, and then the magic happened. And then like, because if you would have told me 8 years ago I'd be sitting here doing this, I'd be like,
right.
Yeah, right. No.
Right.
Like, or if I'd be married, I'd be like, no, like, brother, I hope I got an apartment.
Right.
I'm single,
Or I'm even still here.
Yeah. I'm still alive.
That I'm even still alive. I mean, that's an unfortunate reality with all this is you get, you see a lot of people pass, that are, we're not solitary creatures. Like we want people around us. So, and we're going to surround ourselves with people that, kind of can relate to where we're at and whatever that looks like. And, You know, when you're surrounding yourself with folks that are struggling from this disease, you're going to see a lot of people. You're going to lose a lot of people. You know,
Yes.
it's just the nature of it. Yeah, I agree with you. We were talking about this before we got going about recovery, and I think it's open to interpretation, right? Like I didn't,
Hmm.
I think people you could probably open a dictionary and get a diction, to get the definition. But to me, like, what does recovery mean? In my experience and my point, it's obviously the willingness to admit that you're powerless to this substance or this particular thing, whatever it is. Doesn't even have to be a substance. It can be a lot of different things. But then I'm powerless to this, and you have to sort of acknowledge that. But it's also, to me, it's accepting a life of servitude.
Yes.
Like, in order to maintain your recovery in a healthy way, you have to first and foremost go back to what I said before. You got to love. You got to find a way to love yourself. And
Hmm.
until you can complete that journey first, which is how can TJ love himself again? How can Mike love himself again? And
Yep.
there's lots of ways to do that, but it's I think that has to be the absolute
Hmm.
first step. But once that's accomplished, you really have to maintain it. It then becomes about, how do I give it back? How
Yes.
do I give recovery? How do I help somebody else
Hmm.
that feels like there's no way out? They're stuck in that dark room.
Hmm.
Everywhere they look, it's just they can't see, they can't tell up or down, and they want it. Their soul is speaking to them.
Yep.
I say that, and it's like I remember when I first got started in this space. I would go up and I would help out in our detoxes, and
Yep.
so I get to sit in a lot on like the morning meetings, and I get to hear all of the stories, right? And I did that a few times, and there was a common theme. There was something that I heard, from say 75% of the room, and there may be 20 people in that room or 30 people in that room, and it was almost, almost everyone said something to this or exactly this, that their soul was worn thin. And I feel like my soul is worn thin. And there was something to that effect that was said, like one after another after another. And I always, just wanted to. And at the moment, I never said anything because I didn't know that it was the right time to say it. But it's like, that's your answer.
Yep.
You're literally saying like what the answer is, and, doing that, like loving yourself,
Filling the spirit.
there's something out there that loves you and wants you to be whole and wants you to, to experience joy and happiness. It doesn't want you to live in this place of despair and dark and misery and regret and all the negative things, that kind of come along with this. There's something that loves you, man.
Yes.
Loves you through and through, and it's there for you every single step of the way. It's hard to see it, It's become easy for me to see. I just, I'm 50 years young, so it took me a long time. Like I'm one of those guys. Like I gotta run into the wall 15 times before I figure out that I need to open up the door.
Yep.
But God bless.
Hmm.
I think back on my life and the blessings that I've had, and so many of those blessings did not feel like blessings.
Hmm.
Oh man, they didn't feel like blessings in the moment.
Yep.
They were tough. They were
Yeah.
tough lessons, but the care, but the love was there. I could feel it, and and it came in the form. It's not like somebody was sitting there with a sign. It just came in the form of that of man feeling like I was at my end of whatever it was, and then you just have that interaction with the right person,
And it changes the trajectory of your life.
100,000%. And it's
Hmm.
like you see, and I can think back and I can see it, and I call them my angels.
Yeah.
So I had, throughout my life, I can, like, thinking back, I can identify, 4 or 5, like,
Yep.
consider them to be my angels. They were just there at the right time, and they offered me exactly what I needed, redirect me, and I think that's something bigger for us, right? So
Yes.
yeah, I mean to me, that's the journey of all this,
Hmm.
and I have that conversation a lot with folks when they want to have it. I'm
Yep.
careful with it.
Yeah.
People get a little weirded out when you start talking about God and you start talking
Yeah.
about religion. And I'm not a religious guy. Like I think religion is probably religion in some ways has been manipulated in a way that
Correct.
it can control, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you know, the God that I believe in, does it's not gonna judge. The God I believe in doesn't judge you, right? It's this is all for growth, and and I think that's how we have to approach each other, and that's how I try
Yep.
to approach like people in this space,
Yep.
that are really fragile, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some like it's interesting. I'll drop a little seed, here and there, just
Yeah.
to see if they bite,
If they do, that
Oh,
it's
I'm in
like,
then.
yeah.
I'm in. I'm talking about it. I'm like, I'm like, yeah. But if they
Yeah.
don't, then I leave it, right? Because it's like they're just not ready to hear it yet,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all right,
That's cool.
But I tell everybody if I'm talking to you today, it's because God loves you,
Yeah.
and it's not because I got like some, special, like,
No.
invitation. It's because God loves you,
Yeah.
and I'm just here to tell you that, and want you to be well. And what's that
That's
going to look
awesome.
like? So, yeah, man.
Are you ready to make a difference in the lives of others? If so, then you should consider becoming a recovery coach. Recovery coaches are trained to help people in recovery, seeking recovery, or struggling with addiction. They provide support, guidance, and resources to help people on their recovery journey. CCAR Training is the leading provider of recovery coach training programs. Our programs are designed to teach you the skills and knowledge, what we call the science, while giving you an understanding of your own art needed to be a successful recovery coach. We offer a variety of training options, most offered online. If you're interested in becoming a recovery coach or just learning more, I encourage you to visit our website or contact us today. We would be happy to answer any questions you have and help you get started on your journey to becoming a recovery coach. We hope you'll visit us at www.addictionrecoverytraining.org to learn more.
It's interesting, like this disease, it's so siloed, right? Like it's like substance use is in its own bucket, and it's like, but what does that really mean? Like I think you touched on it, and I heard somebody say it like this, and I think it makes a lot of sense that it's not necessarily the way people like to think about it, but the substances aren't the problem.
Yep.
The substances are the solution. So it's like, people think about it as the substance is the issue. If I can just take away the booze, or I can take away the heroin or the benzos or whatever it is, I can stop getting high. Now I've taken the problem away. So that's not the problem. The substances were the solution to the problem. The problem is what's going on inside of you. And when you can get to that and allow yourself that time to heal. So how do you do that? Again, we get back to the self-love. Like you can, from a clinical perspective, you can unpackage just so much in 30 days, and hopefully they'll continue on with more clinical to kind of get to the root of some of those triggers and, some of those underlying traumas. But what does it look like to live a life of wellness? If you've spent your entire life, like I said, I grew up in it. I didn't know another way.
Mm-hmm.
Wellness showed me a way.
Yes.
Because I got in that lifestyle, I started working with people. Like I saw another way that I could live my life. It was, again, it was God's plan for me. I didn't realize it, but it showed. So for somebody early in recovery, what does it look like? So wellness is, I'm huge on it, right? Like love
Yep.
your body, detoxing 7 days in a facility. You're just getting clear of the substance, right? Not even like really. I mean, you're still feeling the pause for months potentially. True detox though, like truly detoxing the abuse that you've put your body under, and the abuse, the mental and the emotional and the spiritual sort of deprivation that's happened. Like that's all encompassing, and that takes time and that takes work.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I liked my job in wellness a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There were times I could say I didn't love it. I mean, I liked it a lot.
You enjoyed it.
Like parts of it. Parts
Yep.
of it I loved. Parts of it, yeah. But parts of it I really loved. I love every part of this job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not that it's easy. There's challenges,
Yes.
and there's all the things that come along with doing a job. But I wouldn't. I mean, I'll do this for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see myself doing anything else.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much for your service and everything you do for the recovery community. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
It's awesome. You know, you make the world a better place.
We're trying, man.
Yeah.
We're trying one day at a time, right?
Exactly, one day at a time.
Yeah, man. Well, God bless.
God bless. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks.